Gaye is running for re-election as the 4th District County Commissioner. Good afternoon, Gaye. How are you?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Joining me here, we've got Diane Bristol and Kim Holzhauer and Rod Kloha once again. And of course, they're helping me to interview. So thank you, everyone, for taking some time out to be here. And let's go ahead and get started. Gaye, in 2 minutes or less, introduce yourself to our viewers, why you're running for re-election, your qualifications, and your platform.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am Gaye Terwillegar, as Diane has just said, and I am the incumbent commissioner representing District 4. I've had the honor of doing that for 6 years. First of all, I'm a 4th generation Midlander. I'm very proud of that. I know Midland well. I am blessed to have a husband. We reside in Ingersoll Township. I grew up in Midland Township. We have 2 children. We have 4 grandchildren. Secondly, I have a background in health sciences and also have a master's in public health. I have a history in teaching adjunct professor at Delta College. Additionally, I was an executive director for a youth serving organization where I gained administrative and grant writing skills. And literally, we served all sectors of Midland County. Currently, I am vice chair of human services for the current Board of Commissioners. And I also serve on the Midland County Community Corrections Advisory Board. This is a high-level board that represents 12 officials, including judicial, prosecutor, community mental health, probation, sheriff, specialty courts, 1016, J&A, ETC, TRICAP, and community advisory member and corrections. That meets quarterly. I also serve on the Pinecrest board and DHHS board, and I would like to report that I've sat in on 3 rounds of labor negotiations and was on the hiring team for our current executive director, as well as the current director of nursing. And these are crucially important positions to protect those residents of Midland County. Oh, and additionally, I serve on senior services, community mental health wraparound, recovery court, and Region 7 Agency on Aging. Thank you.
Oh, Rod, you're on mute.
Here, I thought I was being cute. I had the space bar working, but thank you, Gaye. What are the 3 most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest those issues be addressed?
Well, first of all, it would be flood mitigation and recovery and rebuilding of the dams. That is a multi-collaborative project working with Gladwin County commissioners, as well as the MBA with that the dam risk reduction grant that is going to go through the Midland Board of Commissioners on Tuesday. And that will be a very, very positive thing, as well as working with, as I said, Gladwin County commissioners. And currently that is projected to be a 2 to 3 year initiative, a huge initiative. Also, broadband, another collaborative with the MBA, working with our out-county townships, as well as their supervisors and the leaders of those townships to do it as expeditiously as possible for those residents that clearly need that service. And also to attract new people to the community for economic business growth. And I think I will talk more about that we do work with the City of Midland additionally with the DDA for the tax increment funding, and another one of the collaboratives that we share in the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gaye. Kim, do you have a question for Gaye?
Yes, Gaye, the top issue we hear from business is the chronic challenge that they have here with recruiting employees. What should government do to help with this challenge?
I would say that the Midland County Board of Commissioners are currently working on that. And we're very, very much aware of that because we have the same challenges within our employee populations for retention and recruiting. We also, this is something that I'm not sure if I need to drop off to the MBA, but this is sort of Midland County at a glance. And one thing that would be a recruiting factor for the MBA for businesses and individuals coming in would be that Midland County actually offers 14 additional services that are not mandated by the state of Michigan. They include road patrol, parks and recs, veteran services, juvenile care center, Pinecrest, public guardian, community corrections, and a few other ones. I think that's really important to know. Additionally, I was reading an article in Michigan Association of Counties, and I haven't brought this before the commissioners, but the article stated that we really need to infuse our own, maybe at a job fair to communicate with high school and college youth that maybe are poli-sci or thinking to be political sci to encourage them to go into local government as a career. And we really need to do that. And it's something that it's like hitting the ground running. It's at ground level. And I think that we need to try that. Thank you.
Gaye, I have the next question. Could you provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth?
Well, I would say that I have some ideas on that. Haven't shared these with the commissioners yet either, but it was just sort of my thinking. Of course, working with the MBA on flood mitigation and dam reduction, but also seeking additional partnerships with the Great Lakes Bay Convention and Visitors Bureau. I think that we could strengthen that relationship. Also seeking partnerships to leverage with other community partners, corporate, healthcare, even schools, nonprofits, and other communities, all community sectors, and also benchmark with like-minded communities with their best practices that they have found that were effective. I know that oftentimes we kind of look towards Ottawa County and Holland. They do have the benefit of a very large lake there, but also does have some like-minded factors to that. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that, Gaye. Rod, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. Gaye, if reelected, what will be your approach to county budget? What is your general philosophy on spending and taxation?
I would say that I am conservative on that we try to minimize when we do have to adjust our budgets, but that does happen. One of the things that we have implemented in the past few years is a 5-year projection budget. And I think that helps us to plan for the future and to anticipate. It does involve a fair significant amount of planning and economic projecting and insight on building maintenance for our 6 county-owned buildings. And I think that it is one of the more positive things that we have implemented. Also maintaining our conservative view of budget and development and to help our families that are experiencing inflation and that are being challenged with the current economic situation. Thank you.
Oh, Gaye, and as you know, inflation is hitting individuals and businesses hard. What can and should government do to help abate inflation?
Well, I believe that, as I said, to keep the conservative budgets in place that we have been implementing in the past and continue to do that and view that as what is currently happening locally, but also one could also look at those same philosophies and as they go in November to vote according to those organizations or individuals that are keeping track of tax dollars and being very careful on how we spend taxpayer money. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Diane Bristol, you have the last question for Gaye.
I do. Gaye, what issues are you specifically interested in that we haven't already covered in the conversation thus far?
Well, I would just like to say, it's not an issue. I would just like to express that I thoroughly enjoy my position. I love my job as Commissioner representing District 4. I also love my community. I know my neighbors. I really do. It's a large family out here, and I know a lot of the neighbors. And I enjoy working with the team that I work with at the commission. And we work well together. And I can't tell you how incredibly important that is to be able to get business done in a timely and professional manner. And we do that. I would say also that I'm proud of the work that we've done executing and maintaining all of our services during a 500-year flood during a 100-year pandemic. I don't know of any other Board of Commissioners in the United States that have done that, and I'm proud of that. And I would ask for all of that in consideration, and I would respectfully ask for my constituents to keep me in as the Board of Commissioners representing District 4. Thank you.
All right, well, Gaye, thank you so much for your time, and to my volunteers, thank you as well. We've enjoyed chatting with you. Certainly, thank you for the services
Likewise.
they provided, and good luck to you.
Well, thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
This time joining us is Connie Glave. Connie is running for election as the Midland County Commissioner in the 4th District. Good afternoon, Connie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, fine. Thank you. Joining me, we have Kim Holzhauer and Diane Bristol. And those of you who have watched a lot of our interviews know that they have been with me for many of them. Diane has been with me for all of them. So thank you for that to our volunteers. Let's get right into it. Connie, in 2 minutes or less, if you can introduce yourself to our viewers, talk about your qualifications, your platform, and why you're running for elected office.
Hi, I'm Connie Glave. I was a pharmaceutical buyer for the health system for 29.5 years before I retired. Once I retired, I started feeding people in the community through our food pantry at our church, Messiah Lutheran, and then through the Midland County Emergency Food Pantry Network. I became the coordinator for the mobile food pantries, where we would bring in a semi of food once a month and feed between 250 and 350 families. So that's what I've been doing in my life. But I found that a lot of the issues that we have are the result of decisions that are made, and a lot of the solutions are part of decisions that are made. So I decided that I wanted to be part of making those decisions.
All right. Well, thank you, Connie. And your light.
My light just.
Yeah.
So do you want me to turn the light back on, or?
Yeah, if you can get that on. And while you're doing that, we're going to move over to Kim.
Okay.
And, excuse me, Diane Bristol has the first question.
Connie, what are the 3 most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest that those issues be addressed?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is the dams and drainage. We seem to have flooding on and off often. The second thing I would say is probably affordable housing. And the third one would be, since COVID, hiring and retention of employees. And the way I don't know what to do with the dams other than make sure that they're done properly when they're done. As far as affordable housing, a lot of communities are starting to build the community housing as being owned and operated by the communities. And that's something that we might look into. As far as hiring and retention, making sure that we have good childcare, affordable childcare, housing, so that new people that come have a place to live and a living wage where they can afford the housing.
Okay, the next question for you, Connie, is the top issue we hear from businesses is the chronic challenge that they have in recruiting employees, which you touched on. What should government do to help with this challenge?
Well, like I said, I think one of the biggest issues is childcare. And a lot of women who might be single or don't make enough money if they do work to pay for childcare. If we had something like universal pre-K, where children would be in a pre-K environment and therefore the parent wouldn't have to pay for childcare, that would help. That's about all I can think of right now.
Okay, Connie, can you provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth?
I'm not sure, since I'm not a business person, I don't have a lot of experience with business, but I would think having good schools, having housing, and having childcare would also help businesses succeed, because if their employees don't have those, they're not going to be able to be at work. They're going to be less likely to show up.
All right, thank you for your views on that, Connie. Let's talk about money. And I think that Kim Holzhauer has the first question.
I do. So Connie, if elected, what would be your approach to the county budget? And what is your general philosophy on spending and taxation?
Well, my philosophy on spending and taxation is that we need to make sure that we care for the least among us. And that does require some taxation. But we can't tax businesses so much that we have an environment where they can't succeed. And so you have to find some kind of a balance between the two. Enough taxation that you can take care of people, but not so much that you're going to make it an environment where you can't attract businesses.
All right, thank you. Diane, you have a question about inflation.
I do. Inflation is hitting individuals and businesses hard. What should government do to help abate the situation?
And that's one that I've been thinking about a lot, because I was around in the 70s when OPEC decreased their production to increase the cost of oil. And that's the point in our history when we had this kind of inflation. In fact, we had double-digit inflation, and most of it was caused by the oil companies raising prices. And that's something that we don't have control over. But at the same time, in our community, we have the opportunity for windmills like we have behind my house. We have the opportunity for solar, geothermal, and converting over to transportation that is plug-in hybrids. I'm not one that have everything plug-in, because I have a plug-in car and it does run out of the battery every once in a while. And I'm glad that I have a hybrid where it switches over to gas. So, but all of those will help us be less dependent on oil. So when these kind of things happen, we're not going to be at the mercy of the oil companies.
Okay, and finally, Connie, what issues are you specifically interested in that haven't already been covered in our conversation so far?
Well, my biggest one is rural broadband. I live out in the country and I'm doing this interview from my church because where I live, I don't have internet except for my phone, and it's iffy. Most of the time when you're doing Zoom, it freezes. And so I have to be on the phone so that people can hear me, and then they see my frozen picture on the screen. So I'd like rural broadband out where we live, but I'd also like it to be fiber optic, because I think fiber optic is what's going to get us into the future. There are others that are coming along that will get us by for now. But as we add more devices, as we add more things, I think we need fiber optic to really be in. And I have friends in South Dakota who live miles from anything, and they all have a fiber optic broadband because South Dakota made a determination years ago that they were going to put fiber optic in their whole state as much as they can. There are mountains in the areas and they can't do it through the mountains, but they're doing it in any areas that they can. And we're a flat area. So that is my big issue.
All right, so it seems it would be a little bit easier to implement here.
Yeah.
All right, that is the conclusion of our interview. Connie, we have enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know your perspective, and we will let you get back to your day. Thank you so much for your time.
There. Okay.
All right.
I didn't know the lights were going to keep going out. But
Motion sensor lights.
yes.
All right. Thank you, Connie. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
We are meeting with Allison Wilcox. Allison is a candidate for the Midland County Commission, the 5th District. Good morning, Allison. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. Thanks so much for
Good.
having me.
Good. All right. Well, we're glad to have you here. And joining us for the interview is Diane Bristol with CBM Services and Kim Holzhauer with Andrews, Hooper, and Pavlik. So we'll hear from them in a few minutes, and let's go ahead and get right into our interview. So Allison, in 2 minutes or less, could you introduce yourself to our viewers, outline your platform, your qualifications, and why you're running for 5th District Midland County Commissioner?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Allison Wilcox. I grew up in Georgia and I lived in Texas and Louisiana before we moved to Midland 22 years ago with my husband Neil and our 2 children. I have degrees in chemistry and chemical engineering, and I worked as a manufacturing engineer for IBM in Austin for 6 years before becoming a full-time mom. I've enjoyed living in Midland, and it really feels like home now. I've been an active volunteer in the community ever since we moved here, from being a Girl Scout leader and a picture parent when my kids were young to serving now as assistant treasurer at my church and being on the leadership team of Women of Michigan Action Network. I didn't get involved in local politics until 2018 when I worked on Sarah Schultz's first run for state representative. I did a lot of door knocking at that time and talking to voters, and learned quite a lot about local politics as part of that process. 3 years ago, I decided that I wanted to learn more about our local government, so I took part in the City of Midland Citizen Academy. This year, I've been attending commissioner board meetings and committee meetings to better understand what the job of county commissioner entails. The commissioners set policy, oversee the budget and the various county departments, and listen to and advocate for constituents. The job is really less about political party and more about being willing to work as a team with the other commissioners and county staff to make sure the government runs efficiently and effectively. After observing for several months, it's a job I believe that I can do. I also believe that my experience, skills, and community connections will help me be especially effective at the 3rd item on that list, listening to and advocating for constituents. will be out in the community and accessible to the residents of District 5.
All right, thank you so much, Allison. We appreciate that. Diane Bristol, you have the first question for Allison. this
I
morning.
do. Thank you, Allison, for being with us this morning. What are the 3 most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest those issues be addressed?
Well, I have a minute for that. Okay. One big issue is flood safety and flood prevention, and especially in District 5 because we live downstream of the dams. Of course, a lot of people want the dams and the lakes restored, but it's going to be important for the people in my district to make sure we don't have flooding downstream of the dams. And I know that the Midland Business Alliance has the Committee on Infrastructure going, and I'm really excited to hear about what they are doing. And I think they've got some great innovative ideas. I think other issues facing the county, well, I know facing the county government in specific is employee hiring and retention is a big problem. There's a lot of open positions, particularly at the county jail. And it's been very hard for them to hire people and have people stay. So the way to address that, of course, is to make Midland a place where people want to live, where we have affordable housing and a vibrant community. And we're well on our way to doing that. I think we just need to work on that some more. There's also a need, and the third thing is just making Midland a vibrant and welcoming community to everyone so that we can continue to grow our population, because that's important.
All right, thank you, Allison. I know a minute is
It is, and then I said, oops.
Not a lot of time. You did great. You did great.
Okay.
Our next question comes from Kim Holzhauer with Hooper Pavlik.
Good morning, Allison. Again, thank you again for coming. The next question is that, speaking of employment, the top issue we hear from businesses is the chronic challenge that they have in recruiting employees. What should government do to help with this challenge? Thank you.
Well, there are a couple issues here that makes Midland a place that's harder to live in especially for workers. And that is finding affordable housing and finding affordable quality childcare. And I know the state recently put out a new program to help daycare people start new businesses in daycare. And I think the county and with the Midland Business Alliance can work on making sure people know about that and training people who want to be daycare workers and daycare owners. Affordable housing is something that we're going to have to encourage our builders to consider. You can't always build a $250,000 house. You need to consider people who want to need lower cost housing, maybe duplexes, more apartments. And I know the Midland Housing Alliance, I think, is working on encouraging more affordable housing in the community.
All right, thank you for your perspective on that, Allison. Next, Diane Bristol has a question for you on economic growth.
Provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth.
Well, I have never been a business owner, I will admit that. I have been an employee and I have been a patron and customer of lots of businesses. Midland has a lot of great small businesses. We've become a wonderful community with coffee shops and a variety of restaurants, certainly better than when I moved here 22 years ago. I think we're going the right direction. I understand that the Midland Business Alliance in particular does a lot to help nurture new businesses and get them brought into the community. And that's certainly something that we need to continue doing. As far as other things that can help them, I know there's a lot of real estate available in town and places that could be redeveloped into new businesses. And I'd love to see something done in the Kmart Plaza. That's definitely a need for something else to go in there. So I think there's a lot of things going on and we're working on doing those, going in the right direction.
All right, thank you for that. Well, let's talk about money. Our first finance question is from Kim Holzhauer with Hooper Pavlik. How appropriate. Yeah.
So Allison, if elected, what will your approach be to the county budget? And what is your general philosophy on spending and taxation? Thank you.
Thanks. Well, my general philosophy on taxes is that I personally have always looked at the taxes I pay as an investment in my community. And I think businesses probably feel the same way. So I want to make sure that investment is spent wisely and efficiently. And part of the job of the commissioners is to oversee the county budget and make sure that it is spent wisely and effectively and efficiently, so that we don't waste money and that it's put to the things that we see as most important. And from going to the commissioner meetings, I have seen that the county employees are really good at looking for grants to get money to cover things whenever they can, and the county is very effective at considering how much money should be spent, and working with Bridget Granstra, the administrator, in being good stewards of the taxes that we get from our citizens.
All right, thank you. Well, we can't talk about money right now without talking about inflation. That's first and foremost for so many people. So Diane Bristol has a question for you about inflation.
Inflation is hitting individuals as well as businesses hard. What should government do to help abate inflation?
Well, it's interesting because I did some door knocking earlier in the summer, and when I asked a lot of people what issues concern them, they said, well, inflation, prices going up. And I said, well, what do you think is to blame for that? And they all said they didn't really know. It was more a situation of the general economy, the recovery from COVID, supply chains. And to some extent, there's not a lot that county government can do except to support businesses if they need loans or training, small business loans, that kind of thing. It's more of a state and national thing. I think the Fed has probably done quite a bit to slow the economy down by bumping up interest rates. And that's, of course, way above my level. I think we just have to understand that it's difficult for people to afford some of the things that they want to afford, and just grit our teeth and get through it.
All right. Allison, we have one more question for you, and actually it's more of an opportunity. We're almost to the end. You have 2 minutes to speak with our viewers about anything else you would like to share. So go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today. The reason I decided to run, one of the reasons I decided to run, is because I really love Midland, and I think we have a great place to live. And the county commissioners that we have done an okay job. But it's time for someone with a slightly different perspective to come onto the board. I'm eager to work for the community. I'm eager to get out in the community. I want to do more interfacing with my constituents and finding out what they are concerned about. I know particularly in the 5th district, flooding and flood prevention is a big concern. And there's also, when I talk to people, a lot of them, especially in the city of Midland, say, well, what does the county government do? They don't see the county government as visible when you live in the city. But I know the county is very important as far as working with Four Lakes Task Force to rebuild the dams and restore the lakes, and to prevent flooding downstream of the dams. And the county also does just basic things like mosquito control, and runs the jail and the sheriff's department and that kind of thing. So I'm eager to work with the other county commissioners on the board to make Midland a welcoming place for everyone, so that we can continue to have sustainable growth, which is important for not just the businesses who live here, but the people who live here. Because I would like Midland to be a place where my children want to come back and live and raise their families too.
All right. Well, we are at the conclusion of our interview. So Allison, thank you so much for your time this morning. We've enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know your point of view. And Kim and Diane, thank you for your time as well. Thanks so much.
Joining me is Eric Dorrien. Eric is the current county commissioner in the 6th district for Midland County, and he is running for re-election. And assisting me with the interview today, we have Diane Bristol from CBM Services and Kim Holzhauer from Andrews Hooper Pavlik. So thank you, ladies. You've been a great assistance to me. I appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get right into our interview. So Eric,
Yes.
thank you so much for your many years of service to Midland County and for sharing your time with us today. In 2 minutes or less, if you could introduce yourself and explain why you're running for re-election, your qualifications, and anything else you'd like to share in 2 minutes.
Sure. Well, as many of you know, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you this afternoon. As many of you know, I'm Eric Dorrien. I'm the commissioner for the 6th District on the Midland County Board of Commissioners. I was born in Midland, raised in Midland, educated by Midland Public Schools, went to Central Michigan University. I have a Bachelor of Science in Education from them. I've been commissioner since June 15th of 2012, when I was appointed to serve out the rest of, or the remainder of Jim Bradley's term. And since then, I've been elected 5 times by the people of the 6th District. I'm the chairman of the Human Services Committee. I also serve on the Administration and Operations Committee. I had previously served on the Finance Committee, as well as the now defunct Law and Justice Committee. So it's all 4 of the committees that had been in existence I've served on in my 10 years there. I'm also the commissioner that sits on the bargaining committee for the Road Patrol Deputies Association, and I believe we just ratified their contract. It was either last year or 2 years ago. I can't remember, but we did that work then. I also have subcommittee assignments on the Emergency Medical Services Advisory Board, the Juvenile Care Center Advisory Board, Midland County Employee Safety Committee. I'm also an alternate on the Local Emergency Planning Committee, which I was previously a full member to that. And I'm also an alternate on the Parks and Recs Committee. I retired from the federal government, from the House of Representatives, after almost 21 full years of service to Congressman's camp, as well as Congressman Molinar, where my main focus was Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Defense inquiries, but basically helped everybody with whatever their issue was. Again, I'm the current office holder. Who am running again. I would appreciate the support of people in this district, and glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate you being here. Our first question for you comes from Diane Bristol of CBM Services.
You're fading in and out. Your volume is fading in and out here.
Oh, well, Diane and Kim won't be surprised about that. How is this? This better?
Much better.
Oh,
better.
okay. I just need to be closer to the computer. We had these problems the other day. So, all right. Diane Bristol with CBM Services has our first question for you.
Eric, thanks for being here this afternoon. What are the 3 most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest those issues be addressed?
Well, I'm going to try and keep this to the counties and not the city. The county, obviously, we've got basically flat revenue. I believe it's increased slightly, or we haven't got into our budget, proposed budget for that's the next finance meeting. But having that flat tax base basically, and the expectation that we're going to maintain those levels of service, which is getting harder and harder and harder to do. And most of the money for a lot of those services are coming straight out of the general fund. If they're not granted that money through organizations. That obviously the 4 Lakes Task Force, the dam failures, that's an ongoing process. We're midway through that. We're going to get our lakes back here pretty soon, but we're still in midstream. No reason to change horses midstream. The third priority, oh geez. I can't think of a third priority right off the top of my head. Those are the two main ones. It's always balancing the budget with whatever revenues we have. And the whole damn situation's just been mind-boggling.
All right, well, thank you. And we will have time to circle back on that at the end if you would like to do so, Eric.
Sure.
But right now, Kim Holzhauer with Andrews Hooper Pavlik has the next question for you.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time. The top issue we hear from businesses is the chronic challenge that they have recruiting employees.
Sure.
What should government do to help with this challenge? Thank you.
Get out of the way. Get out of the way, government. They're encouraging, people to get their GEDs if they don't have them, encouraging as much as we can with trade organizations. Not everybody goes to college, folks. So being able to, we certainly have that at the county. We're in competition with everybody else out there, and it's very hard for us to attract. It's also very hard for us to retain employees. Once they get that training, they'll go elsewhere if they're not being treated fairly here. So recruitment and retention is probably our third biggest issue in the county. We have a very difficult time attracting talent, and many times we have to bring people in way above the first step and have to recognize that they've got years of experience and years of education that we are going to have to pay for out there because somebody else will if we don't. That's about it.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question from Diane Bristol.
Eric, could you provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth?
Again, stay out of the way of business. We need to deregulate much of, I don't want to say the word deregulate, but we keep throwing barriers up to business. We're not very friendly to business, and we're not very friendly to employers. I'm not saying that as Midland County or as a commissioner we're not. I'm just saying that generally we're not very friendly to, we have people out there that cannot stand corporations, and they don't like employers. So I really couldn't think of anything that we could do. I'm certainly not in favor of abatements. But we got into that situation years ago, and I believe it was the Snyder administration that finally got us out of attracting companies for free and letting you set up shop here for free. So abatements, I don't really believe in, but we can try to make the place as attractive as possible and as inviting as possible. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not in business. I'm sorry.
All right. No, that's a very good answer. Thank you very much. We can't talk about government without talking about taxes. So to that end, Kim Holzhauer has our next question.
So Eric, if elected, what would your approach be to the county budget? And what is your general philosophy on spending and taxation?
Well, we don't really have anything to do with what you're being taxed. You vote that upon yourselves. We can bring the proposal up. I think our current levy is 4.85 something. And it's stayed that way ever since I've been on the board. And the only way that's going to increase is to ask the people to increase that. And then it's up to them whether they want to tax themselves further to get those services that are getting harder to provide for them. That's about it. I'm not a businessman. I can't give you the business perspective that you're looking for. Sorry.
That is okay. That's all fair information. Next question from Diane Bristol.
Eric, inflation is hitting individuals and businesses hard. What can government do to help abate inflation?
Stop printing money. We need to stop these ridiculous stimulus programs. We're bribing the electorate. And both parties do it. So we need to stop doing it. We need to stop the printing press. Inflation, by definition, is too many dollars chasing too few goods. So I think in this country, we probably have enough goods that just don't get to you on time, but we certainly have way too many dollars chasing them. And anybody who understands a bit about economic theory gets that.
All right,
Yep.
very good. We're almost to the end, Eric, and this is the point in the interview where you have 2 minutes to share anything else with our viewers or circle back to any of the questions that we asked previously. So 2 minutes.
Well, there's a question before the voters of the district, all the districts, of all the people that have the 4 commissioners that have competition. And the question I've got to the voters of the 6th is a simple one. Do you want a commissioner that is a Midland native? If so, I'm your candidate. If you want a commissioner that's been here most of all of his life, is a longstanding member of the community, I'm your candidate. If you want a commissioner that already knows the job and has been sworn into the duties of that job for the last 10 years, I'm your candidate. So I thank the Midland Business Alliance for this opportunity today, and I hope that the people of the 6th district vote for me on November 8th, so I can continue the work that we are in the middle of. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Eric, for your time today and your candidacy. And thank you, Kim and Diane, for helping out once again. And we'll let you get on with your day.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Joining us is Sarah Schulz. She is a candidate for the 6th district for the county commission. Good afternoon, Sarah. How are you?
I'm great, Diane. Nice to meet you.
Good, good. It's nice to meet you as well. And joining us for the interviews, we've got 3 volunteers from our Business Advocacy Council. We've got Kloha from Circle K Service, Diane Bristol from CBM Services, and Kim Holzhauer from Hooper Pavlik. And they're going to help me facilitate the interview. So let's forge right ahead. Sarah, in 2 minutes or less, could you introduce yourself, outline your platform, your qualifications, and why you're running for elected office?
Thank you for that question, Diane. Well, my name is Sarah Schulz. I'm running for County Commission, District 6. And I mean, to summarize it, I'm just running because I have a heart for serving our community. You might recognize me from my previous campaigns for State House, all in the color purple. And when I was doing that work, I always focused on putting people over politics. That was what I and my friends and team focused on throughout all of that effort, because we wanted to focus on what mattered to our community, regardless of all the current state of party divisions. And through that experience, I really got to know our community so well. And I never lost my drive to serve. And so that's it. That's why I'm running for a county commission. I'm a business person myself. I run an HR function for a national organization. We have 29 sites across the country and over 4,000 workers. I personally manage a personnel budget of over $150 million. And as a side gig, I own my own LLC small business right here in Midland. So I know that when businesses thrive, so do their communities. And I still sort of in an old-timey way believe in the personal touch, right? Knowing your community, knowing your employees well, addressing your business needs in part by addressing your community's needs and your employees' needs so that everyone can reach their full potential, including your business. I'm also just a really deep listener. and problem solver. I do that every day in my human resources capacity and throughout my whole career. And directly hearing and serving the community is a key role for a county commissioner. And I think it's a role that I'm well suited for.
All right, well, thank you for that introduction, Kim, and helping our viewers get to know you a little bit. Our first specific question comes from Rod Kloha with Circle K Service. Rod?
Hi. What are the three most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest those issues be addressed?
Well, I think the first and most obvious issue is the flooding, right? And if anyone in local government is not listing flooding as a top issue, no matter what entity or group of constituents that they're talking about, then they're out of touch with the needs of our community. And I think that we need to address the flooding here in Midland County, not just related to the dams and the dam failures, because that was the biggest example of the flooding, but Midland's been flooding for decades. And we need to address our infrastructure in order to make sure that we have a safe place for people to be, that every time it rains, we're not worried about what's going to happen to our basements. I'm both a flood survivor and a lake property owner. Like, I can see all sides of these issues, and whatever the solution, we need to do it safely. And we need to make sure that we put the safety and like the vitality of our community up front. Other issues, of course, include making sure Midland County is an employer of choice, both the businesses in our county, but also the county government agencies themselves. Because if we keep having a churn of employees all the time, we can't possibly serve our constituents and our community members. And lastly, I think we need to make sure that our county officials are accessible to the individuals that they're serving. We need to make sure that their meetings are happening at a time and space where the availability for our community members is there, and that we are integral parts of the community so that we can all listen and problem solve together.
All right, well, thank you for that insight. Kim Holzhauer has our second question.
Okay, one of the top issues that we hear from businesses is the chronic challenge that they have in recruiting employees. What should government do to help this challenge?
Yeah, so I'm an HR lady, right? I totally hear this. And it's like, this is not just an issue that is like prevalent all the time. It's a huge issue right now, right? You hear all the news programs and articles about the Great Resignation. And I am in the middle of that. We're working in HR in my organization and with my clients who I do HR consulting with. I think that local businesses can make sure that we are set up with an infrastructure to attract and retain community members that will also be more viable sources for employees for our local businesses. I hate to sound like a broken record, but that comes back down to infrastructure too, right? If you don't have an infrastructure in your community that feels like it's safe, that feels like it's not going to get flooded all the time, then you're not going to be able to attract people to come and live here. And that's going to have a really huge impact on every business's ability to attract and retain employees.
All right, thank you for that insight, Sarah. And Diane Bristol has our next question.
Sarah, could you provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, that's about voice, right? And accessibility. So when local businesses feel like they have an advocate in their local government that knows who they are, that is attuned to their needs and their challenges, then that opens the door to success, right? Because then we can know as members of the commission what's possible, what our constituents need and what those businesses need. I really come back to this employer of choice question, right? It's not just an issue for county government, it's an issue for local businesses too, because when we have a round robin of, revolving door, right, of open positions and lack of consistency and stability in our staffing, then we can't possibly provide the best services and our businesses suffer. So we need to make sure that we're able to create those environments for success. I think we can have really great opportunities for growth in things like internship programs. Some of the leadership programs that are already happening here in Midland are great examples of how we can really focus on this whole issue of employment to help our businesses thrive.
All right, thank you. Well, we can't talk about government without talking about money. So we've got a couple of money questions for you. Rod Kloha.
If elected, what will be your approach to the county budget? What is your general philosophy on spending and taxation?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Okay, so I believe in two quotes that I actually have written on my bulletin board, if you could see on the other side of my monitor. They are collecting more taxes than necessary is legalized robbery, right? That's Calvin Coolidge. And on the other side, taxes are the dues that we pay for the privilege of membership in an organized society. And I believe in both of those things, right? Businesses should pay as little taxes as necessary to do their fair share to help a community thrive. And those tax dollars need to be considered as sacred trust to those in government to use as efficiently and wisely as possible for the best possible good. As I mentioned, I'm a small business owner, right? I know what it's like to pay my business taxes, to collect my receipts, to make sure things are balancing at the end of the year. I want to make sure that particularly our small and medium-sized businesses are equipped to be able to have the best outcome from a tax perspective, just like our large corporations.
All right, thank you. Well, we can't talk about money without talking about inflation. So our next question comes from Kim.
Yeah, so inflation is hitting individuals and businesses hard. What should government do to help abate inflation?
Well, I think that if we're talking about local government, right, county commission, city council, those kinds of things, there are very few actual levers that those entities can pull in order to really affect actual inflation, right? Those entities like the federal government, the state government have the ability to do that, but local doesn't. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that local government can't ease the burden of inflation that's happening, right? We can't necessarily control costs, but we can potentially ease the burden, and we can do that by offering more opportunity for career growth for our folks in our community and in our county. We can try to reduce costs as much as possible especially for individuals in high needs areas that are impacted by inflation more. We can do things like increase the availability of something like County Connection, right? That is such a vital service in our community. And yet what I hear is that sometimes the accessibility is very challenging, which makes it difficult for people to get to work, which makes expenses go up. So those are some of the things that we can do to really shore up the foundation to ease the burden of inflation while we're not able to, from a county perspective, actually influence the rising prices due to inflation.
All right, thank you. Diane Bristol, you have our last question for Sarah.
I do. Sarah, what issues are you specifically interested in that haven't already been covered in our conversation thus far?
Well, we covered most of them. So I think that for the most part, what I'm really focused on is making sure that we are, as a county commission, balancing the needs of the folks who are impacted by the flood with the needs of the folks who are living on and have property on the lakes, to make sure that safety is number one and that we reduce and mitigate the cost of flooding. That's the hugest issue in our community right now. And the county commission has a huge role to play in that going forward. As I mentioned, whatever we can do to use innovation in the talent spaces in Midland County, both for county agencies and for businesses in our county, to attract and retain the best possible talent. And the retention being so important because that just helps with so much consistency and institutional knowledge that we lose when we just see this exodus of employees. And I mean, the third I mentioned, accessibility, right? We need a county commission that is accessible, that also has a whole lot of varied perspectives on the county commission, that understands our community in all its beautiful dimensions, right? And I have had such a great opportunity in the last couple of years to get out into the community, to walk hundreds of miles, to have thousands of conversations, to really be able to understand what's going on in our community from a business perspective, from an individual perspective, and I'm able to bring all those perspectives onto the county commission to really just do what's best for our community.
All right, well, thank you, Sarah, for your time and for the good conversation and giving us a little bit of insight into you as a candidate and what's important to you. Thank you for your time.
Awesome, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much.
We'll have Scott Noesen. Scott is an incumbent county commissioner for District 7, and he is running for re-election. Good morning, Scott. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great.
Good, good. Joining me this morning to conduct the interview, again, we have Diane Bristol with CBM Services and Kim Holzhauer with Hooper Pavlik. So let's get right into our interview. And Scott, in 2 minutes or less, could you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about why you're running for re-election, your platform, qualifications, etc.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. There's really two questions here, why and then why me. The why for me is pretty simple. I want to give back to the community. I've lived in Midland County and in the city of Midland for 47 straight years. I am a retiree from the Dow Chemical Company, 32 years of service there. Married with 2 children, 5 grandchildren, and 1 great grandchild, by the way. So that was pretty easy for me. I have been fortunate to be in the county and taken advantage of all the services over almost 50 years. So this was a good way for me to give back. And so when a number of folks approached me about 8 years ago now, it was a pretty easy decision for me. The bigger question, why me? Why should you vote for me? I think really there's probably 3 big reasons. One is experience, one is leadership, and then the other one is results. So from an experience standpoint, I mentioned I'm a 47-year resident. I know the county. Even though I've lived in the city, I know about the county issues. And also I'm a 4-term 8-year county commissioner. So I am looking to get reelected for the 5th time. As far as leadership goes, I'm current chair of the Midland County Board of Commissioners, the chair of the Midland County Finance Committee, a board member of the Michigan Association of Counties, and I'm current president of the Northern Michigan Counties Association, of which Midland is the southernmost member of the Northern Michigan Counties Association. So all of those give me some of the leadership skills for that are helpful in doing the work of the county.
All
and that's
right.
it.
Thank you for that, Scott. And
I'm sorry, I've got a timer that I keep too, and it's
there you go. All right, okay. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, we've all heard of, well, what really is the gateway to the north? Is it Midland? Is it Houston? Is it Clare? Whatever. But
yeah, good point.
You've given the official answer. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have a series of specific questions for you. And to get us started, Diane Bristol from CBM Services has the first question. Diane?
Scott, thank you for being here with us this morning. What are the 3 most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest that those issues be addressed?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just start with what I think is the obvious one: get the dams rebuilt. we had quite the natural disaster, and we've been fortunate enough to get money through advocacy from the state to help rebuild those dams. That's going to happen. It's going to take some time. Looks like when it's all said and done, by the end of 26, we will have 4 functioning dams and lakes to go with it. So that's number one. Number two is something I feel real passionate about, and I know the MBA does too, and that is countywide broadband. It's just unconscionable to me to think that there are kids out there who have to go to McDonald's to do their homework. And that's just not right. So I've taken a very active role in that one. And the final one is also something that I think the Midland Business Alliance understands, and that is attracting and retaining employees, not just at the county itself, but for all the businesses within the county. So I think those are the 3 biggest. That last one is why I sit on Michigan Works Board and the consortium board there to help with attracting and retaining employees for the county.
Scott, I swear you're looking at my list of questions because you walk right into the next one
Okay.
from Kim Holzhauer. Kim?
So thank you for joining us, Scott. We appreciate your time.
You bet.
The next question is, the top issue we hear from businesses is the chronic challenge that they have recruiting employees. What should government do to help with this challenge? Thank you.
Yeah, that's so let's build off of, Michigan Works. The consortium board of Michigan Works is, it's now a 5-county region, and that consortium board is made of commissioners from all 5 counties. So, trying to live the mission of Michigan Works of providing the opportunities for folks to get the skill sets they need, find the jobs that they want. Those are kind of the critical things that we need to make happen. I think we have the resources at Michigan Works to make that happen. But even on a more general basis, what we can do as a county is to make sure that the county is a great place to be. And if it's a great place to be, then that's going to help us get more employees that have the right skill sets. And so that's where we're really focusing our attention.
All right. Thank you for that insight, Scott. Next question from Diane.
Scott, please provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that can happen. We're harping on this idea of attracting and retaining employees. So I think I covered a little bit of that already in the previous question, but we manage the tax base too. And, by managing a tax base, both residential, commercial, industrial, that gives us some of the resources we need to be able to do the things that we want to do. I think a good example and a good example of the relationship between business and county is in like the Downtown Development Authority, one of these authorities where there's actually taxes diverted from the county ledger and giving the opportunity for some of these authorities to raise economic growth. And from my standpoint, that's important that we look at that relationship all the time to make sure that those types of opportunities are really coming to fruition, the economic growth. So the tax credits that you get are actually causing some true economic growth. And I think in the case of Midland, it's a good story to tell.
Well, Scott, again, you're walking right into the next question. It really is like you can read my list. Kim?
I can't.
I know you can't. This is awesome. Kim, do you have the next question for Scott?
I do. Scott, if you are reelected, what will your approach be to the county budget? And what is your general philosophy on spending and taxation? Thank you.
Yeah, as little as possible and as much as necessary on the taxing is the way I like to approach it. And as chair of the finance committee, I think one of the things that I advocated for very early on when I first got there, actually 8 years ago, is a forward-looking budget. We get very good at understanding what's happening in the year. But as part of my job at Dow, I did a lot of strategic planning, and I really advocated for them. We finally got a 5-year look, trying to assess what's happening in the world, in our state, in our country, et cetera, that's going to impact our budget, either positively or negatively. And that's been incredibly helpful for us. Now, can you always foresee things like the dam breaking? No. And that has obviously put a little hitch in our giddy up in terms of funding, but we've gotten a tremendous response from the state in terms of funding. That's probably going to allow us to do what we need to do from a dam standpoint.
Scott, another hitch we're dealing with right now, inflation. Diane Bristol has a question for you about inflation.
Scott, as you know, inflation is hitting individuals as well as businesses hard. What should government do to help abate inflation?
Spend less, spend money that we have and only what we have. I just before this call, I looked at my stock portfolio and looked at, we just had another rate increase by the feds yesterday to try and control inflation, but we're getting perilously close to getting under 30,000 in the Dow, and that's just unacceptable. So I think we need to be very careful about spending only what we have and staying within the limits of a budget. That for me, that was very easy to see coming from business. I have to tell you, when I first came in as a commissioner and I asked about a balanced budget, well, they say, yeah, sure. Here's our revenues, here's our expenses, and the difference we make up in the general fund. That to me is not necessarily a balanced budget. Balanced budget is pretty simple. Revenues equals expenditures. And yes, you keep a general fund kind of as a rainy day fund, et cetera, but we need to be very, very careful that we spend less from a government standpoint now.
All right, thank you for that. Well, Scott, we've covered a lot of ground in the past few minutes, but our questions have been very specific, and now we want to give you the opportunity to share anything else you'd like to share with our viewers, and you have 2 minutes for that.
Okay, let me just say a couple things about my beliefs. The role of the county commissioner is to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of all its constituents, and the way that county commissioners and the county can do this is by building trust and credibility through action. Okay, so I think that's our number one goal, and is also my personal goal. I think another belief I have is, and I think you probably heard it throughout here, is government should have a limited role. We need to provide key services, but we need to do that in an efficient and a fair and equitable manner. And then finally, we have an incredible staff at the county, and our job is not to micromanage. Our job is to provide policy, input, guidance, and let our incredible staff do what they do. And so those are kind of the three beliefs that I have, and will continue to have in the future. It's, I'm running for a 5th term, and I'm interested in doing this as long as I'm having fun. And guess what? I'm having fun. I do think we're making some progress. And just a final note, as I get involved in more of the Michigan Association of Counties, people look to Midland, believe it or not. There are 83 counties, and when I go to these meetings, we are sought out. Kathy Lunsford was just at our recent meeting as a county treasurer. People wanted to know more about how does Midland do these things. So I'm pretty proud of the fact of, that we actually get things done and people recognize that. So that's kind of, for me, the acid test. And I think that will probably hold up well. I hope it does for this next election.
All right. Well, Scott, we thank you for all the many years that you've already provided to the county and the residents. We appreciate that. And thank you for your time this morning. It's been a real pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Have a great day.
We have joining us today, Elena Smith. Elena is a candidate for the 7th District of the Midland County Commission. Good afternoon, Elena. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you. Well, this is an opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit and get your input. So we've got some specific questions for you that Diane Bristol and Kim Holzhauer are going to ask. But before that, we're going to give you 2 minutes, Elena, to introduce yourself to our viewers, talk a little bit about your platform, qualifications, and why you're running for office. So 2 minutes.
All right. First, I wanted to say thank you so much to the Midland Business Alliance and to each of you for hosting these interviews and working with my schedule. I really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Elena Smith. I am running for County Commissioner for District 7, which is entirely in the city of Midland and includes from Eastman to Saginaw to Wheeler to Swede down to Patrick, and then back to Indian. So kind of from the downtown up until the center of Midland. I have lived in Midland County for my entire life. I grew up on Haley Street in the city and then in Warren Township as a teenager. So I've lived in Midland County for my whole life, 33 years for anybody counting. I am now a homeowner within the last few years and live near Grove Park with my partner, Michael, our dog Greta, and our 2 cats, Zito and Big C. So I am a social worker and I work for a local hospital. I have my master's in social work from Saginaw Valley State University, where I also got a bachelor's in Spanish. I've done medical social work, political social work, and a lot of community organizing through different agencies in the community. I'm highly involved in our community and I spend a lot of time working and volunteering with others in our community to do our best to improve the community. I view running for local office and hopefully becoming a county commissioner as a natural extension of my social work and my desire to better our community for all of us. I have been spending a lot of time talking with community members and plan to continue doing so. I think that my social work and community organizing knowledge combined with the input of our community members can make a real difference in improving countywide community resources that we all use daily. Thank you.
Elena, what are the 3 most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest those issues be addressed?
1 minute. The 3 issues that I feel are most important are affordable housing, or the lack of it in Midland County, and providing more of that. As a county commissioner, I would do everything in my power to give it the green light to approving apartment complexes or encouraging more affordable starter homes across the county. The other thing is, or not, one of the other issues in facing Midland County residents is transportation resources, increasing access to county connection and increasing their abilities to be able to provide more transportation across the county to people and have it more reliably so that people can use it for work and school, especially on the outer edges of the county. And lastly, increasing access to and knowledge of mental health resources. So encouraging, letting people know what resources we have in our community, because we do have a lot, and helping them to better access them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You have a question.
So the next question, one of the top issues that we hear from the business community is the chronic challenges that they have in recruiting employees. What should government do to help with this challenge?
So with that, I will kind of go back to one of the top issues that I mentioned, which is the affordable housing. Talking to both my friends and people and voters in the area that I've been talking to, many of them have mentioned that they are applying for jobs elsewhere in other places where there's more affordable housing, and are being forced to relocate out of Midland to be closer to that house, or to be closer to that housing and to the job that they are getting. So I think people, if we had more affordable starter homes, especially for young families in our community, then people would be more likely to stay in our community, more likely to fill those spots by employers. And that would improve economic stability in Midland and help people to be able to just stay here and grow here as they get older.
Alaynah, could you provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth?
I think local businesses need to be kind of incubated by things like we learned about at the farmers market, and help small businesses grow and help them maybe with tax cuts as they were starting out and getting established in the community. And that would encourage more people to start small businesses. And if they knew that they would have kind of an incubator time period and a time before they could transition to paying for things fully. And I also think that like I mentioned before, with the helping employees for small businesses would also be helped by the housing and other resources for the county.
All right, thank you for that. Our next two questions have to do with funding. Kim?
So Alaynah, if elected, what will your approach be to the county budget? And what is your general philosophy on spending and taxation?
So I don't think anybody necessarily loves paying taxes. However, I think that most of the things that taxes go for are vitally important for our society to function. As a first-time homeowner in the city, in the last few years, I started paying property taxes for the first time in my life. I was a little nervous at how much they were, but I was glad to know that that money is going to pay for firefighters, police officers, county employees, Pinecrest Farms, the county jail, parks, mosquito control, and roads, bridges, and other vital infrastructure that we have, that we all use and benefit from daily. Without everyone chipping in our small part, our county and state would not be able to provide all that we need as a society. With that being said, I also feel that we need to be judicious with taxes, and they can impose a burden on citizens and businesses alike. We need to make best use of money raised through taxes and not spend it wastefully. I am in support of taxes being somewhat flexible based on a person's income. An example is when my mom was retired and was pretty sick, she was able to utilize a program in Midland County to temporarily lower her property taxes based on her age and income. I think that with a little flexibility with a little flexibility, the taxes that we need are necessary, but they can be flexible based on kind of as a person's income.
Okay. Alaynah, inflation is hitting individuals and businesses hard. What should government do to help abate that situation?
So from a county government perspective, I would say that not much can be done about inflation per se. I feel that needs to be handled at more of a national level and partly at a state level. However, what can be done on a county government level is work to negate the impacts of that inflation and the troubles it can cause for community members, especially those living in poverty or members of the ALICE population who will experience the effects of inflation the most. This can be done by encouraging the expansion of our social safety net. This means encouraging knowledge of and utilization of resources such as County Connection, Department of Health and Human Services, Habitat for Humanity, Midland County Emergency Food Pantry Network, and more. If more people hit hardest by inflation could make use of the wonderful county and community resources that we have, they would be better able to weather the storm of inflation until federal policies can work to calm it.
Okay, Alaynah, so what issues are you specifically interested in that haven't already been covered in our conversation thus far?
So I wanted to specifically highlight mental health resources. So as a social worker, I frequently work with people who are undergoing a mental health crisis or have a developing mental health concern. The part that surprises me most is not the mental health needs that people have, but rather that they are unaware of the mental health resources that we have in our community. Even if they are aware that like these services exist, they frequently do not know how to access them or pay for them. Many folks' insurance covers mental health treatment, and I find a lot of people do not know this until too late or until their mental health concerns have escalated. As a county commissioner, I would use my platform to share knowledge of these local resources, work to decrease stigma of receiving mental health care, and advocate for expansion of mental health services and coverage in our county for county employees and other county members. I also wanted to talk about County Connection a little bit more, if I have a minute. So Midland is blessed to have two public transportation services, Dial-A-Ride and County Connection. I spent a good part of my childhood living on the edge of Midland County out in Warren Township. As a low-income family, we frequently utilized County Connection, but struggled in later years to use it as they could only come out to a certain area if they had enough riders to that area due to budget cuts. I think that if we could better utilize, if people could better utilize County Connection and they had expanded services and coverage, then people would be able to rely on it more to get to school, to get to doctor's appointments, to get to jobs. And if people, that's a barrier that I hear people talk about not being able to have a way to get to their job. And if we were able to reduce this barrier, people would be able to hopefully gain better employment, and that would encourage economic growth in our community as well.
All right. Well, thank you for your thoughts and your input and letting us spend some time with you and get to know you, Alaynah. We sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.